Bombay.
Welcome to the India Risk Management Award Series. Today, business models of organizations are changing very rapidly, and they need to take into account dynamic changes happening across the world, be it volatility or geopolitical risks. Besides, they are challenged with sweeping and dramatic changes brought by the digital revolution. So how are organizations decoding and aligning new age risks with growth strategy? To discuss this, I have with me Mr. Shashank Pai, Chief Risk Officer and Head Investor Relation, Mindtree; Sanjay Datta, Chief Underwriting and Claim, ICICI Lombard; Anurag Srivastava, CFO of Tata Teleservices; Brij Gopal R. Jaju, CFO, DB Power; and Mrityunjay Kapoor, Head of Risk Consulting, KPMG. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Okay, if I can begin with, Mr. Jaju, volatility. Now, that has become one of the biggest risks today. We see whether it's, oil prices, and one of the big examples is we have the shale gas sector. At one point, it was considered a very lucrative sector, and then suddenly with the oil price crash, it is now left in the lurch. So how, this volatility, how are we, incorporating in our growth strategy?
Investors look at the growth from the context of volatility is that how do you see growth in price earning, where you encompass all important parameters like how your revenue going to be, how expansion in your margin going to be, what are going to be capital investments, and most importantly is a leadership part. Now, a prudent and ideal leadership must have a capability and energy to sense changes around. For example, if you mention about the example of shale gas, one point in time it was looking too lucrative, and there's a time maybe a lot of investments have been made. After that, things have changed for the bad and then the worse, and today the whole paradigms have changed. So it's a question of how robust risk assessment systems you have in the company and organization, and make all your people aware. Then you can take a decisions on quick shifting on the business models, reversing the positions which you have earlier taken, and the organizations which are stuck to that original decisions probably have underperformed and destroying the value from a stakeholder's point of view. So my take here is, it's not that all the time you run after the growth. Growth has to be a capital efficient, growth has to be something like profitable and churn economic values in the future through a robust risk assessment and management processes.
Okay, but Mr. Pai, if you're a chief risk officer, now he's saying that you have to be in line with, what is happening and how are the changes happening. But would you say that as a CRO, you are really looking into that? Now, how would you also look at this risk of volatility?
Yeah. See, the interesting thing, what's happening in the world is volatility can mean different things to different people, and that volatility can be something good for certain sectors and something bad for certain sectors. If you look at from an IT industry perspective, being the chief risk officer of an IT company, we say that we want to balance our portfolio, go into markets that we believe we have our strengths, can capitalize on our strengths, and at the same time we think we should be engaged with clients in their invested areas. So even when a volatility happens, clients who are in this sector really need people like us to help them to come out of that volatility. So I think the key thing is that yes, we can't take the eye from the volatility happening anywhere, but at the same time I think people have to balance their portfolio and look at different types of sectors and have strategies saying that if something goes wrong here, do we have the strength to recoup in something else?
Okay, but Mrityunjay, if I can come to you, the sector that is largely impacted, and if a company is really into shale gas or into oil, or even if we take the geopolitical risk where there's glut in the commodity sector, a UK Anglo-American investor has hived out 65% of its workforce because of the commodity glut. So in that sense, how are they really being able to tackle this whole issue of geopolitical risk or volatility?
I think in today's world, volatility is part and parcel of doing business. And of course, geopolitical risk has emerged to be one of the major threats that possibly every business is facing, which is working outside its national borders. We recently did a survey, a global CEO survey, and actually, interestingly, what came out was that 89% of the CEOs actually voted that they were pursuing aggressive growth strategies, which means that essentially growing despite or with the fact that the economy is going to be volatile. There are going to be significant ups and downs, both in terms of commodity prices, currencies. Different models are going to emerge. So I think, in situations where there is high volatility, obviously, one of the ways to look at it is how do you hedge for it and how do you take a long-term view. And the second element is really how do you prepare to manage your input, costs and correlate it with what your output is going to be. And though that's very difficult to do because some of the companies have a lot of capital investment and that happens at historic prices. But I think that is the way the future is going to be, where different business models are going to evolve and speed to market or speed to change actually is going to drive how fast you really grow.
Okay, so Sanjay, when you're talking to companies, as an insurance company, seeing that their business models are really changing, is there a different kind of advice that you give them or to take into account many other kind of risks that are more?
Very importantly, I think, as everybody is agreeing that volatility is part of any business. Business of businesses to take risks. Having said that, it's very important to understand the implications of the volatility. In a sense, you must learn to ride it. It's like surfing. You must need to learn to ride those waves. But B also, be able to dissect, see the interconnectedness and be able to understand, the whole aspect of the impact and the likelihood. That's very important. A lot of people don't get into understanding the likelihood of a particular event happening and the impact of it. Once having understood that, then look at what are short-term measures and long-term measures of mitigation. Could be internal, could be changing your business model, could be hiving off certain risk, could be transferring certain risk. But that's very important to understand and if you're not an expert at it, let's say the impact of or the likelihood of earthquake, no business should do it on its own. There are experts who understand that business of the likelihood of an earthquake and the impact of an earthquake to your business. And you better get hold of that expert and see what will be the impact, and then do a kind of analysis what to transfer and what not to transfer. Just giving a very far out example, things like the kinds of new risks which are coming in, in the kind of natural catastrophe areas where rainfall comes in, you can't make out whether it's act of man or act of God, in terms of the cities which become, waterlogged, Thailand, JNK, Chennai. You need to understand the impact and see, and the kind of the likelihood of such events happening. Companies, always make up a huge mistake on the likelihood. They either, think it will never happen, or it'll, or they think that, it'll happen. I've got means to tackle it. So that's where our point is actually.
Srivastava, you're the CFO, so you're always looking at the numbers and concentrating on the numbers. But you see, we are facing a lot of global challenges, and everybody is now, the strategy is always global. So if you even take, whether it's a geopolitical risk like violence happening, whether it's a Russian-Ukraine crisis or Syria, how is it that you're really incorporating it in your growth strategy?
Yeah, I think with geopolitical risk, I think the biggest problem is that they are very unpredictable and they're so complex that it's very difficult to even sit and analyze and predict that, okay, these could be a geopolitical risk today and how will it pan out tomorrow. I think one clear thing should be that you should be nimble in your ERM strategy as well. So you can think of various ways of how things will pan out, but at the same time you have to think of a broader risk strategy which covers things which are unforeseen as well. So you may, as you rightly mentioned, that a Chennai flood coming in may be a distant thing in past, but now it's happening so often that somebody needs to devise a very, very predictable strategy around to it. But say Russia invading Ukraine, you can't predict. And if you have business interest in Ukraine, you have to think that if it happens in some part of the world, what are you going to do about it? The other thing is people they are spending time on, so top management is spending time on this, people are committing resources on this. There is enough money which is being allocated to building contingencies or redundancies in the system. But many times people don't follow on those actions. So there is a lot of planning, and most companies now have an ERM strategy. Top management sits and reviews the risk, etc. But suppose you were to build a data center which is just standby to a Chennai risk of getting it flooded. Not many companies will go and invest in a facility where it's just ready for a risk sort of a situation which may or may not occur. So there, I think that's where people don't play. But as you rightly said, geopolitical risk is very difficult to predict, and one needs to be prepared for a broad sense of a problem occurring.
Okay. So, Mr. Jaju, if also when you look at the global strategy, we also are now looking at a lot of mergers and acquisitions and M&As. Now, that also brings its own risk?
Mergers and acquisitions, in my assessment, is one of the biggest risks. One has to be very mindful before even embarking on any sort of venture of merger acquisition. It should not be out of fashion, but it should be very thoughtful exercise. There are two challenges. First challenge is, how do you set up a right consideration? It's basically framework is calculating net present value of all your future earnings, and plus how do you place estimation for value of synergies, revenue and cost synergies. Second challenge which I have seen, which I have most of the M&As have underperformed, is that integration part. Post merger, there are various tenets of integration. Integration is not merely operational side of integration, namely quality, technology, operations and procurement. It is beyond that. Intellectual integration, for example, the best practices, learnings, unlearnings, intangible assets and those kind of things. And beyond that, when it comes to cross-border acquisitions, then emotional integration. You must go for any acquisition provided you have one strong core business to handle that. And number two, as a CFO and finance team and commercial team must do proper due diligence and find out that combined entities should generate higher so-called free cash flow, or combined margins should be greater than that.
Okay, the response strategy, like today I think companies are failing in how they respond when something happens. We have two big cases, the Volkswagen case and the Maggie case. And if you see in both the cases, there is a kind of a compliance issue where they have not really complied. Volkswagen did not comply with the pollution norms and Maggie did not comply with the food authorities. So what is your view, if I can come to you, Mr. Rai, what is your view on these two cases? What could have been done in terms of also risk management and also a response strategy?
I think in these cases, clearly perception management is increasingly becoming important. One is people say something, so therefore you need to respond to it immediately so that the damage is reduced. So I think perception management is clearly an area, and it could be inbound perception management or outbound perception management, and clearly I think you need to have teams to take care of that, because if you don't respond immediately, I think the damage is very severe in these cases and it causes a reputation risk. The second point I think in all of this is that increasingly regulatory and compliance is also increasing. I think best in this case is, because it is complicated, I think we should invest in training, we should invest in tools. And the third overriding thing is that clearly the concept of integrity has to be imbibed within the organization. And I think these are some cases, or rather a common thread between some of these cases, which could have been managed by these means.
Okay, Mr. Srivastava, I can come to you. Do you have just a kind of a governance strategy that is put in place, or is it monitored all through the time? And if the communication is also going through internally all the time to be aware of risk, to give ideas on what can happen, not happen?
So it's a comprehensive policy. I think even while identifying the risk or putting action plans, I think there's a larger organization which plays a role. So there are views taken from various business units, various functions, etc. that is there. It is definitely monitored at the board level. We also have exercises like Mrityunjay talked about the team being dormant for a long time. I think one way to go around it, that you simulate an exercise which suddenly you do an exercise where your network systems are not working, and how does finance team come in and make the payments, critical payments, how does salaries go out, how do you get in collections, how do you get your customers serviced, etc. So you can do those kind of simulations, and then post simulations you discuss the results, you refine your strategy. So it's a constantly evolving exercise. It starts from right from the top, from the managing director downwards, and it's monitored by the board as well.
I would like to add the risk transfer element to this risk management exercise. Obviously it's being done at the highest levels. You need to have response teams there and all of that. But we do what we do, and this is something those who don't do we would like them to integrate in their thing. So we also transfer our risk. As each insurance company, we transfer a risk, and we that's the biggest part of our team. What do we transfer? Whom do we transfer to? And are they stable enough for us to support when those big things happen? And so that's what we always recommend. So when you evaluate all your risks at the boardroom level and all that, evaluate risk transfer as part of that. Sometimes it's just done as a particular something which you need to buy more from a somebody procurement kind of strategy. But it's not procurement; it's part of your risk management strategy, and insurance has to be evaluated. So today, when we buy reinsurance for ourselves, we also look at the cost of buying and how much can we buy. And we also understand that if let's say a volcano happens in India, we are gone, because no volcano happens in India. So that's conscious. That's a situation of ruin. Every company faces a situation of ruin, and if they operate at the level where they protect themselves from ruin, the costs of doing business are too high. They have to consciously agree that this is a kind of situation where there will be ruin. And below that, then they do the prudent things in terms of mitigating, transferring some of this risk, and constantly evaluating as part of their risk management strategy. A lot of people don't do that, because the other issue, which I think which is an issue there, is a lot of people don't understand the difference between balance sheet risk protection and
things. They're looking at third-party liability.
So even things like the compliance risk have balance sheet implications, not only for yourselves but your suppliers.
Okay, Mrityunjay, if I can come to you, brand and reputation risk has really taken center stage, and also because news travels so fast. So, how, as an advisor, what is the kind of advice that you give to companies?
So I think when you're looking at brand and reputation, so the number one area to focus on is to make sure that your regulatory risk is covered. And I think you're compliant with some of the regulations, or actually all of the regulations that are there and which affect you. And that should be the base case. So that becomes the starting point. The second important piece on brand and reputation is essentially social media. And I think you touched upon it in terms of news traveling very fast. So I think one has to listen into what's happening in the social media world. What are people talking about? What is the perception of your product? If something goes wrong, what is the reaction? And then accordingly strategize in terms of responding to it. Because if one waits for responding through say a press release or a formalized kind of a statement, it probably is too late, because the minute anything goes wrong, or the minute there is a sort of a negative reaction to either a brand or a product or whatever it is, it travels extremely fast, and one has to listen in to see as to why and what the reactions are, and what can be the counter steps or the countermeasures in that space.
Okay, Mr. Pai, there's another big revolution that is happening. It's a digital revolution that is also bringing in new age risk. So what is the kind of changes that you're seeing because of the digital and IT revolution?
Things like Internet of Things. I'm sure when I'm sitting here, I'm sure somebody is tracking me, some data is going somewhere about me. So clearly, a lot of data is being available across various channels. So I think we need to be cognizant of that and make sure that we are very selective in doing what we want to do in the digital media as well. Having said all of this, clearly it is an opportunity as well for companies like us, because we need to be on our toes to innovate and to help those, rather our clients innovate as well. So clearly we are preparing and we are in the forefront of it, though it's an evolving sort of a thing, with big data and cloud. There are a lot of things happening in the digital world. An IT company perspective, I think we are preparing, we are on the forefront, which also means that we need to do things differently, to take care of the digital evolution. So for example, not the traditional methods work, we need to look at newer methods of delivery, because people want things instantly, and therefore if you don't do something well, the recovery procedures are also need to be very quick. So we are also doing things differently. We need to set up centers closer to the customer. We need to do delivery models differently. The demographics of people are also changing. We need to train people differently in the digital era. So I think we are preparing for that as well. It's no more the traditional methods of training will work in this whole this. So clearly from our perspective, I think you need to track all of this, monitor this, and clearly take a call when something is not going well. Be prudent and take a call saying that, okay, this platform is not working for me. Quickly move into something else which can help someone else.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.